It's football and other F words. And guess what? We are live on our off day to bring you the latest information that we feel is necessary for you guys to kind of wrap up practices, head into the Senior Bowl. Stony is live. The game is tomorrow. We'll be live after the game. And then, of course, we got to thank our sponsors, Lions Ford of Lewisburg, Tennessee, Mark Spain Real Estate. Here we go. Let's just jump right in because, here's where I'm at. The quarterbacks, they're trash. And they're Senior Bowl trash. They're not necessarily bad prospects trash. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there are no main takeaways from the Senior Bowl except for on the quarterback, except for I'm never going to buy into the hype and be excited about quarterbacks play at the Senior Bowl ever again.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. If there's just something about this event that's just inherent to unexciting quarterback play. Maybe it's just the drills, or I don't know. But you're right; they had some name value this year, and I don't think anybody really jumped off the page. I mean, we're talking
not in
about
a good way.
We're talking about like Tyler Shuck being like, oh, he's really good at operating the offense and getting in and out of the huddle.
You can already see people taking this Senior Bowl practice, and trying to inflate what they've seen on film and trying to talk themselves into, well, maybe in the Rams offense he could start.
Yeah. So it's funny, like the things we're talking about, like, wow, this is a really good week for Tyler Shuck because he can hand the ball off without dropping it. Like, I don't know. It's a really low bar. It's been disappointing, and I think the most disappointing part for me is people that are taking the workouts that we've seen this week and using it to say like, oh, Jackson Dart, surefire first rounder at this point. Jackson Dart might be QB2 in this class. Like it feels crazy. Like y'all aren't actually watching what's happening on the field this week,
right? Yeah, there's a big difference between being the best quarterback in the Senior Bowl and being the best quarterback on film. And listen, all the teams are tape driven, and I understand that agents have gotten in a few of these people's ears and said, hey, a lot of NFL teams are asking me about my client. And then they're taking that as, maybe he's moving up the board. Or maybe they're fucking concerned about their client.
Maybe they're agents.
I look at this and I go, I do not see quarterback 3 is going to have to present itself on film. It did not present itself down here at the Senior Bowl.
What about at the Shrine Bowl?
No, it didn't. Maybe. I mean, maybe it did, but Kyle McCord didn't play. So we'd have to rely on Kyle McCord practice videos. So, again, not a big deal. But what I'm saying is nothing about their performances said, these guys, quarterback 3. Because that's what we were looking for. Who was going to rise up and say, hey, I'm quarterback 3? Was it going to be Jalen Milroe? Was it going to be Jackson Dart? Neither of those guys did. Will Howard didn't play. And then you got on the other side, everybody's talking about how great Kyle McCord was at practice. Well, maybe it is Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
But it's going to have to come down to film. It's not going to come down to the combine. It's not going to come down to the Senior Bowl.
I did think it was really interesting, though, that you said Jalen Milroe had a better Thursday than a Wednesday and Tuesday.
But, that wasn't hard to do.
Well, from
what I was about to say,
8. From what I saw, there were a lot of balls in the dirt at the feet of receivers. Did not look like he was having a very good practice. So even to rebound from that, not enough to get into the conversation as QB3.
No, it wasn't even enough to be called the best quarterback of day 3.
Okay.
It was just better for Jalen Milroe.
Just better for Jalen Milroe with his Kenny Pickett hands.
Yeah, and they look small in person. So that's enough about the quarterbacks, because if you're the Tennessee Titans drafting one of these quarterbacks for anything more than being developmental, good luck.
And they don't need a developmental quarterback.
Yeah. All right, so you might as well just develop Will Levis.
Yeah.
Good luck with that as well. So let's go to the lesser necessary positions. Let's save the good positions for last. Okay. Let's knock out some positions real quick.
Okay.
Interior defensive line. Obviously not a massive need, but there is, a need for rotational pieces.
Well, I think
there is a need for Sebastian Joseph Day. It's not we have to spend anywhere from the 1st through the 5th round on that guy. So that's what I say when it's not necessary. So who in the interior defensive line do you think could fit the Tennessee Titans?
I think it's a really deep IDL class, and I think where the Titans could come into play here is on day 3. It's a deep group. You want to take advantage of it. For me personally, I like Darius Alexander quite a bit out of Toledo. Really long-armed, thick-built, stout defensive lineman. I thought he had a great week. I was surprised people weren't talking about him. I jotted his name down several times on Monday after the first practice. Was kind of surprised he wasn't generating a lot of buzz until yesterday, the final practice. People were finally starting to talk about him. I saw a bunch of draft analysts that hadn't previously scouted him had gone back to watch some of his tape and figure out what kind of player this guy is. But man, you want to talk about burst, explosiveness. He bursts out of his stance. He's got a mean long arm. I mean, that's the good thing about having long arms. When you got long arms, you're probably going to have a pretty good long arm move.
Right.
So he won with that several times, showed a swim move. Most impressive for me was his hands. Offensive linemen struggled to get their hands on him, and they very rarely did because he was so active in fighting and batting them down. I think he's a guy that in this deep class, like any other interior defensive line class, he's probably up near the top of the group. But in this one, because it's so deep, he's a guy that's going to be a steal on day 3.
I know the Tennessee Titans have said they want to build through the trenches, but at some point you have to realize you spent the 38th overall pick on T'Vondre Sweat. You don't have a third. If you had a third round pick, you maybe could stomach a 4th round pick on an interior defensive lineman.
Yeah.
But if you were to pick someone in that top 4 rounds, that person's better be playing on day 1 in some form or fashion. It's not a situation where you could just wait around with all these other needs that you currently have. Now, if they fill a lot of these needs and free agency and all that kind of stuff, now you become a little bit more flexible where maybe you could go up and spend some high draft capital on some of these interior defensive linemen.
Sure. Fair enough.
Same kind of with the linebackers, right? Like they got Cedric Gray, they have James Williams. They just spent a 3rd, a 4th, and a 7th, and then they spent money on Kenneth Murray, and they will likely bring back Jack Gibbons for whatever weird reason because he loves to tackle.
It's a crowded room.
So, like, you don't really want to spend your time down here talking about a linebacker, but a guy that's worth mentioning is Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon. He was the best vocal, the best lineman. He reminded me of a mix of like Deion Henley, but with Cam Hart's leadership.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a guy that could probably come in and be the green dot. Now, I know there's people that think that Cedric Gray could be the green dot or Kenneth Murray was the green dot. So why do you need a green dot? I think a guy like Jeffrey Bassa puts everybody at their rightful roles. Cedric Gray seems a lot like Kenneth Murray, and James Williams is just a wild card, wild man that should go out there and be making plays. But it'll be interesting to see what they do at the linebacker position. But again, nothing you really want to sink your teeth into. And kind of same with the cornerback. Maybe if you get into a situation where Mac McWilliams is there in the 6th round out of UCF, maybe. But like at the end of the day, cornerback, running back, you shouldn't be spending premium picks. And I consider for the Tennessee Titans right now, their premium picks to be anything 5th round and above because they don't have a 3rd.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Boss is the only linebacker worth mentioning down here.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that these running back, linebacker one-on-one coverage drills that they run are incredibly tailored to the running back. It is a highly disadvantageous matchup for the linebacker. It's hard to do. I mean, the running back knows where they're going to go, and the linebacker is tasked with reacting to it. Bossa was the one guy when I was watching those drills that actually won a rep. I don't remember which running back it was against, but he broke with the back, and as the ball arrived, closed the throwing window, got in front of it, stuck his hand out there, batted the ball down. When you can win a rep in that situation, when it is tailored for the position that you are going against, I take note of it. And I jotted that down, was like, this dude is rock solid. He's built like a Greek god. He's the fastest linebacker here in Mobile this week, too. He's got some traits to work with. I think Dan Lanning even said he's one of the best leaders he's ever coached. Checks a lot of the boxes that the Titans say that they're looking for now.
Let's go into the offensive lineman. I want you to give us we're doing F yeah and F'd up. So
Okay.
Who F'd up And who made you say F yeah? So when it comes to offensive linemen, give me two guys that you think that. Give me two guys that are your mainstays throughout the whole week, and then we'll get to maybe some guys that flew under the radar.
Okay.
But in your mind, who are the two big guys that said F yeah, made you say F yeah?
I think Gray Zabel was probably the best offensive lineman down here this week. You want to talk about F? Yeah, just watching him practice this week was you're standing up, pumping your fist, just quality offensive line play. He's a clamper. You can get into his chest, but it doesn't matter because he's just going to latch on. He's going to move his feet, mirror the footwork of the edge rusher. He's going to sit down on the rep, and you're just not going to go anywhere. It was really impressive stuff from him. And then I would probably say, man, that's tough between Ursary and Belton for me. But I think ultimately I go with Ariante Ursary because I don't recall any reps going viral of him getting beat. Like I think he was just quiet, steady all week long. Really good power, really good hands. The movement ability was not an issue this week. They switched him over to right tackle. The play did not dip off. Not a lot of people talking about him down here, but I think he could be a potential solution for the Titans at right tackle at 35 if he's still there, if he didn't work his way into the first round this week.
So which two made you say these guys effed up?
For me, it starts with Wyatt Milam, and I know it's not necessarily his fault that the measurements came in too short for the arms are too short to play tackle, but they kicked him inside, and he struggled playing in space this week. He looked a little wobbly, off balance. Very much looked like a guy that was playing a position that he hadn't played in quite some time. Like he wasn't quite used to having somebody to his left kind of deal. There were a couple of times in the 9-on-7s when he got to the second level and just completely whiffed on a block. There's a play that I can't remember if it was Peebles or Alexander just swam right over him and got to the quarterback. I mean, he was routinely getting beat. This was a guy that was considered a fringe first rounder at one point, and I just don't think there's any way that you could take him at that point anymore. And the other would be Jonah Savanea, a guy that I was really high on, right tackle out of Arizona. Has some left tackle versatility, but the footwork just wasn't consistent enough. He wasn't planting his feet. He wasn't getting his feet set quick enough to establish a base, and he was getting blown off blocks left and right. So he was even sat down on a play. So kind of made me think like, well, if the footwork to get to the edge is not there for him, then he probably can't play at the edge. He might have to kick inside to guard.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with tight ends, and a guy that made me say "f yeah" was Elijah Arroyo, and that should really it doesn't surprise anybody if you've been paying attention to the Senior Bowl coverage or even us. I think I brought him up every day. Yesterday, he put an exclamation point on his fantastic week of practice by punting the ball into the stands.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He was beating everybody, every linebacker, every corner, every safety that was put on him, he beat at some point or another. Outside of some off-target throws, I don't think he had a drop. I don't think he really let the linebackers, get the body on him or anything. Like, he did a fantastic job all week. And I'm going to say another guy that made me say F yeah. And to be honest, I didn't think that was going to be the case when I'm watching the tight ends this week. But CJ Dipper from Alabama, he made me say F yeah. Like I'm looking at him run these routes, do these shoulder fakes, do the route running, the technique and setting up and stacking his routes. And I'm like, Jalen Milroe may be worse than I even thought that he couldn't even find this guy. That guy got open a lot. I was like, F yeah. Like, I mean, I wasn't expecting it. It's not Alabama bias. I wasn't expecting it. And sometimes with your tight ends, you just don't expect it. A guy that I think effed up, and I do want to throw an honorable mention onto Bartholomew.
Yeah.
For the pit tight end. Quick feet. He got open a lot. I kind of saw him as Mason Taylor. Thought he was Mason Taylor because he's making some good plays receiving, but also because the helmets and we're both yellow, and from our vantage point, I couldn't make out what if that was purple or if that was blue. inside the yellow.
Mhm.
And then we didn't have at the time our roster. So I was going to throw
Yeah.
that out there. Uh, Harold Fanning Jr. is going to be such an interesting case study because I think a lot of people had him slotted in as tight end 2,
Yeah.
or at least like in pencil. Like, well, we're going to see him at the Senior Bowl, but he should be tight end 2 because of all of his explosive traits, his receiving traits, his athleticism.
It's a pass catcher.
He's a pass catcher. And he's coming from Bowling Green. You're like, okay, well, he should be able to do some stuff here. He did some stuff against Penn State.
135 yards and a touchdown.
Yep, you get there and you're just like, he did not stand out.
No.
And he didn't. He had some blocking plays that caught some people's attention, and he caught my eye in a run blocking situation in 11-on-11s yesterday. I know he stood up someone a couple of days ago, day one,
Josiah Stewart.
But when you start looking at it, he was like a B-, C+ player in every facet of the game all throughout the week.
Yeah.
And that's not something you really want to see from him, especially when you got a Gunnar Helm, who didn't play in the Senior Bowl, but we know that he's going to go pretty high. You also have Colston
Loveland,
yeah,
kid from Michigan.
Who's likely going to go high. And, of course, you have Tyler Warren. So if you were looking for him to be tight end 2, I think he may end up being tight end 5 or tight end 6. And maybe that's a steal for someone, or maybe people are just going to rely heavily on the tape. But I thought he was a guy that didn't do himself any service this week.
Had some bad drops this week, too.
Yeah, 2 significantly really bad drops.
It's just really inconsistent work from him.
I don't know if there's another tight end that really qualifies as effed up. I mean, maybe you could say that Terrence Ferguson did, but I wouldn't really say that.
I would put him on the F, yeah.
I don't know if I'd put him on the F, yeah.
I think he and Bartholomew are the two.
Jake Briningstool, I think maybe had a little bit of effed up. He just couldn't be consistent, very up and down. All right, let's talk about 2 surprises, good or bad, that you had from the offensive line group.
Surprises. Oh man, from the offensive line group. Well, see, I want to say Sabanea, but I've already talked about him a little bit. I'll say is it Willie Lampkin? Is that his name? The center from North Carolina. We were kind of cutting jokes on the guy the first day at practice because like dropouts, the offensive line group is not what we expected it to be. They have to go to North Carolina and they bring in this guy that's under 6 foot. He's like 260 pounds, like tiny. I'm reading people saying he's going to be a fullback, and we're cracking jokes about the guy. But then he comes out and has one of the best weeks of practice on the offensive line, to the point where I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Could this guy actually work in the NFL? I mean, he looks like a wrestler the way he's out there, like standing dudes up that have like 50 pounds on him. It's incredible. Good hands. He's kind of a grappler, gets his hands on you and doesn't let go. He attacks from a wide base, gets his feet out wide, bends at the knees, gets his hips down, and just controls. Like, it reminds me a lot of Jake Andrews from Troy. Out of a couple years ago at the Senior Bowl. He's now with the New England Patriots. But scrappy, undersized guy. Like, the way I phrased it on Twitter was like, you don't make it to the Senior Bowl with that size profile at center without having some dog in you. But I was surprised to see the quality of tape that he put on this week of practice.
I'd say, to add on to that, I think a good surprise was Carson Vinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he surprised so much this week with his length, his athleticism, the dog in him,
his demeanor.
A lot of people have said all week that by the end of this week, he worked his way up into a possible top 100 slot.
I mean, he has ideal size you look for in a tackle.
And supreme coachability, the desire, that love for football. I mean, this is a guy that came out and was still able to be noticeable as a guy from Alabama A&M against some of the premier pass rushers that he has to go up against. Because you got to think, the American team, right? So Carson Vinson, is from Alabama A&M. And he was routinely going up against guys like Deion Walker, Walter Nolan, Tim Smith, Omar Norman Lott, TJ Sanders, Cameron Jackson, Princely Yamamanalian, Baron Sorrell, Kyle Kennard, Shamar Stewart, Jared Ivey, Savion Jones, RJ Oben. I mean, those not some of these are slouches, but not everybody slouches.
Well, didn't he beat Shamar Stewart on the rep that led the push-ups for the defense?
He did.
Like, Shamar Stewart's a top 20 pick. And Carson Vinson put him on the dirt.
So to me, that's a big surprise in that instance. Going to the tight ends, I don't think I had a real big surprise. I mean, I guess I kind of touched on it with CJ Dipper. I think I was just really surprised by his toolkit, I guess you could say. But I was surprised by Thomas Fedone for walking around back to the huddle like a praying mantis.
Gotcha,
so
right.
I guess that will count.
How about this UCLA kid that's built like a Roblox character?
Yeah, now that guy's pretty like cool. Slow as shit. I've never seen a tight end slower out here at the Maliki Matavo or something like that.
He's like a Porta-John had legs.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Just big and square.
Okay, so let's go to. We did kind of done our offensive line. Is there any offensive lineman that you just want to do one last thing on this offensive
line? Well, I wanted to mention Miles Frazier.
Okay.
He was voted the American team's top offensive lineman by the players this week. I think he's a guy that's kind of flown under the radar, would be a really nice fit for the Titans. I think he could come in right away and compete for right guard, but he got some run at right tackle this week too, so a little bit of versatility there as well. Plays with good burst, practice with great fluid lateral movement in the mirror drills, well-timed hand strike. He's a real squatty guy, can anchor down and shut down a pass rush. I think he's going to be a really good value add. A lot of people think he's going to be a day 3 guy, and if you can get him in the 4th or 5th round, brother, that's a steal right there in my book. I think more people should be talking about Miles Frazier this week.
I was trying to see if Josh Connolly was named top offensive lineman for the national team.
Yep.
So that was something to put out there. So it was pretty interesting list of names here that we'll get to. But like Miles Frazier, like you said, he had some good stuff shown up on tape and all that. Okay. So let's get into wide receivers and edge.
Okay. Two things the Titans need.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to lump 3 people in the same group.
Okay.
And the reason why is because they are all guys that put in the work, put in the effort, showed up on tape week in, day out. But I don't think they're going to get drafted very high.
Okay.
But I do think that because they're not a known name, but I do think that they deserve some recognition on there. And that's Isaac Tesla from Arkansas.
Okay.
That's Kamir Dyke from Florida. Or what do we say?
DK.
Kamir DK from Florida. And Arian Smith from Georgia.
Yeah.
So all 3 of those players, to me, kind of personified what the Senior Bowl is really about. It's not really about your first round draft prospects. It's not really even about, it's about maybe getting some 3rd round prospects into 2nd round. But it's about these guys trying to earn their way and to get looks to make the team.
It's about the meat of the draft.
And they are 3 guys. Isaac Tesla was a late addition. He is a little bit over 6'3", 200-something pounds.
Good frame.
He has speed. I do not understand how Arkansas could not find a use for him. Well, because I'm like, this guy was on Arkansas, and excuse me.
It's the Razorbacks for you.
Yeah, it's a Razorback issue. I mean, they get these talents, and they don't ever know how to use them. And listen, I'm not saying that he's going to be anything. But if you are looking for a guy with size and speed and dependability and just shows up every fucking day, he ran one of his routes right into a cornerback, plowed the corner over, and still got 3 yards of separation, made the catch. That guy was catching touchdowns all day. Arian Smith was a guy that was explosive right from the get-go. He had some strength and leverage and all that kind of stuff. And his big issue is drops. So there's a guy that I think I would take a chance on if I were still looking for maybe multiple wide receivers.
Yeah, for sure.
And Kamir Dyke, again, I don't know really what Florida was doing with him.
Florida offense.
But he's a guy that had good, nice size, speed combination, good link to him. Any of these 3 guys make it into undrafted free agency. If I'm the Tennessee Titans, I would try to sign as many of them as I can.
Yeah, and the Smith kid out of Georgia has really explosive potential. I mean, he's got to clean up the drops, but you got to think if you can maximize that kid with the skill set, the physical talent that he has, he could be a real weapon for an NFL passing game.
Yeah, and I'll say another guy that made me say F yeah, and I wasn't expecting him to, was really Tez Johnson.
Yeah.
I was not expecting the way that he won. I really expected the cornerbacks to give him more trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these are some big, physical, talented cornerbacks down here at the Senior Bowl. And it didn't matter who was lined up against him. It didn't matter if it was press, if it was zone. They gave him 5 yards, 10 yards, or 0 yards of cushion. He was getting open. And it wasn't just speed. It was his technique. It's his feet. It's the way that he is able to change his speeds and change direction on a dime. I'm all in on some Tez Johnson. It's going to be – he made me say F yeah every fucking day.
He's a really slippery guy that seems to the further he gets into his route, the more he begins to separate. And it shows up on the tape too. So that's an encouraging thing. Zach talked to Mike Borgonzi a little bit about the type of wide receivers that he's looked for, and Tez Johnson certainly strikes me as that type of wide receiver.
I'd say 2 guys that effed up. Oof, this could be hard. Man, it's really hard to pick out 2 guys that F up. I would say maybe Brew McCoy, unless it was injury related.
It had to have been injury related.
If it is injury related, that's an issue with Brew McCoy getting injured.
Yeah.
So if it is injury related, regardless, I think it's an effed up situation because at this point in time, I don't see really. I don't get it with Brew McCoy. He looks it. He has adequate athleticism, but he couldn't get open and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to have to throw Brew McCoy in there. And I think I'm going to go. I don't want to go Jalen Royals, but I got to keep it 100. But we at least know the reason why he didn't have a great week.
Yeah.
He had a really bad yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to that he was playing through injury in 80%, right?
Yeah.
So 80%. So he's not fully healthy. But at the end of the day, you got to be judged on what you do on the field. And while he did some good things, day 3, I think all that stuff kind of caught up to him at the very end. Okay, so let's go edge.
Okay.
F yeah.
Mike Green. Easy. Answered all the questions that he needed to answer. Came into the Senior Bowl adding on about 15 pounds of muscle, weighed in at 251. And big question after that was like, would it come at the expense of any twitch and bend that he's known for that shows up on the tape? Didn't really seem to slow him down at all. Looked like the same guy that we see on tape. Was hitting a myriad of moves on these offensive tackles down here. Blew up Josh Connerly. Connerly couldn't get his feet set quick enough to establish a base, and Mike Green made him pay for it and put him on his ass in a rep that went viral on Twitter. I mean, one of the guys that you watch for the first 2 days and you wonder, why is he even still here in Mobile? And then you find out that, he's wrapping it up for the week, going to go back home and continue his draft prep there. He's a guy that earned it, though. Mike Green was awesome this week.
What about another one? You got to do 2.
I got to do 2 FYs. The other one, I think I would go David Walker because The measurements came in. He's a little short, stout, short arms, a little light. You kind of wondered about the level of competition, but I think he really answered the bell. It took him a little bit to really get settled in and start showing up, but once he did, he beat Anthony Belton on a couple of reps with a nice move. Can run down the middle, use that natural. The thing about short guys is that they kind of have a natural pad level advantage, natural leverage advantage, and he used that to his advantage. Really got in there and knocked a couple guys off the block, but also showed some nice moves, some nice hands this week. I think he's a guy that improved his stock quite a bit this week too.
Think about your two F'd ups while I go to talk about our sponsors lines for
Okay,
Mark Spain Real
gotcha.
Estate. That way, give your voice a rest a little bit. Mark Spain Real Estate, go to them, markspainrealestate.com. Head over to them. Make sure that they are your number one go-to for all your real estate needs. And if you need a new car, pre-owned or new, it doesn't matter. You go to Lewisburg, Tennessee, go to Lyons Ford, tell them I sent you. Drive a little, save a lot. They'll give you all the discounts that you qualify for. And they'll also make sure that you get the most bang for your buck. So, going back to the edge class, give us two guys that really just made you say that, man, they effed up.
Well, I think primarily it's Landon Jackson. I mean, I like Landon Jackson's tape. I think he strikes me as like a traditional 4-3 defensive end. He's a very thickly built, powerful pass rusher. He's not the bendy type, but he still came down here and was just trying to run down the middle on everybody, just trying to straight line bull rush people, and it wasn't working. I mean, he was washed out of the play several times. He ended up on the ground several times. Anthony Belton put him on the ground at one point. I wanted to see him show that he could develop a pass rush toolkit, like show some moves out there, throw some combos, throw a counter out there when you start losing a rep and you're starting to get washed out of a play. He didn't do that, and I think he might have practiced his way out of that second, third round that he was projected to go in. Second, I was not that high on Princely Umami-Alan's tape. Strikes me as a traitsy guy that you kind of have to teach how to rush the passer, and that held pretty consistent this week in Mobile throughout practices. Didn't really flash a wide skill set, a lot of moves. Didn't really pop at all this week. And for a guy that is getting some first round buzz, we need more from him, and he didn't deliver.
Yeah, I don't think he's going in the first round anymore.
I don't think so either.
I think you could almost swap Mike Green for Princely Umami-Alan.
Your mom's an alien.
Your mom's an alien, and be right there. I'm going to give you guys two surprises. I think I was just pleasantly surprised by Jaylen Nowell. Now, I know that Jaylen Nowell came in with a lot of hype and everything, but the way he won in every way you want to see a wide receiver win, physical contested catches, getting separation with speed, getting separation with technique, making deep catches, making sideline catches, and climbing the ladder kind of catches. I mean, he did everything you needed him to. I think he even almost came down with a one-handed catch.
Okay.
You know what? I think he actually did bring that down for a catch. So, he did everything he needed. He was voted as the best wide receiver on his team, rightfully so. And you can't really go wrong if you're the Tennessee Titans looking for that slot guy. But I think with Jaylen Nowell, because he's so good with his route running and he's so good on the sidelines, he could also be an outside wide receiver in some packages.
Yeah.
And even in the red zone and still be productive. His size will not hinder him that way. So I think I was pleasantly surprised by Jaylen Nowell.
It's a guy that Iowa State used in that function too.
Right.
They would line him up all over the place, outside in the slot. Didn't matter.
And I'll say this. I think I was surprised in a bad way. And he came on towards the end. But I still think I was surprised in a bad way with Jaden Higgins.
I was too.
I think there was just too much bad the first day and a half to 2 days that he just he needs a lot of movement to throw off the defensive back to generate separation. Meaning,
Yeah.
he has to resort to things like triple head fakes and do this with the shoulders, like he's out there shaking his titties for money.
Yeah.
And at this point, that's not going to work in the NFL on a regular basis. And so you got to be a strong contested catcher. And I don't really think he was a strong contested catcher down here. If you're not one of those down here and you're not one on tape, then you're not going to be one in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the separation questions are prevalent on his tape as well.
Yeah.
Is one of the things that I had concerns about watching him. Was kind of like I don't see this dude separate enough, and then he comes to Mobile, and lo and behold, he's not separating enough. So strike one, strike two. You're on thin ice before you're out.
So give me two guys at the edge group that you were surprised with.
At the edge group
Mhm.
or the wide receivers?
The edge.
The edge that I was surprised with.
Yes.
I don't know that I have one that I was surprised with.
Even if you're surprised they're that bad.
I was surprised. I was looking forward to Landon Jackson, and I was kind of surprised at how mediocre he was and outright bad. Like,
so not only is he an effed up, you're also going to double pile on him.
well,
you're basically just calling him slow right to his face.
Well, I just I expected a lot more out of him.
We were pretty hyped to watch him this weekend.
Yeah, because I thought he was going to be like the bull rusher, that he was going to be the guy that like got into somebody's chest and lifted him off the ground and threw him down.
Country strong.
Country strong, yeah. I will say,
looks like Rictus.
Yeah,
from Mad Max.
I will say I was pleasantly surprised to see Shamar Stewart check a lot of the boxes.
Yeah.
He's got some sketchy tape at times. I watch and I wonder like how much of this is the byproduct of being a part of a really good Texas A&M defensive line, but he answered a lot of questions and proved himself to be, I think he's going to be a top 20 pick in this draft. Surprised me how well he used his hands, stick that arm out there and just push an offensive tackle back. Flashed a little more pass rush nuance than I think his tape shows.
Okay, so tomorrow, I know we didn't mention safeties. I know we didn't mention running backs. And let me say this. I think there's a lot of running backs down here that showed a lot in practice, especially the kid from Syracuse, LaQuint Allen. I loved Marcus Yarns out of Delaware, Devin Neal. I mean, there's just so many of them. I mean, the running backs were probably the best overall position group.
Yeah, probably.
And I talked about the safeties that stood out. We'll see. And to me, it's like I wanted to also focus on those positions tomorrow because you're going to be able to see who really stands out in a game when it's all happening and all that kind of stuff. So, we'll kind of focus on those maybe a little bit tomorrow on tomorrow's show after the Senior Bowl game, which will be live in the press box. So give me two things that you are looking for in tomorrow's game. It could be a theme, it could be a position group, it could be two players, whatever you want.
I want to see consistency out of this offensive tackle group because I think specifically the national team, I think they had three really good tackles. I don't know if all three of these guys are going to play tomorrow, but Connerly, Belton, Ursery, I think can really put an exclamation point on the week with a good game tomorrow. I also want to see what, like to your point, these running backs have looked good in practice, but the drills make it really hard to evaluate the running back.
Yeah.
So during the game is where we see if these guys are really what they looked like they were throughout the week, or if it was just, running drills against linebackers that, are severely outmatched in a disadvantageous position. I'd also say like the operational stuff that we saw from offenses, like the quarterbacks. Can these guys show that they can get in and out of the huddle? Can they show that they can move on time and effectively as a unit? I think that's an important thing in the NFL evaluation that you don't really get in practice, that you need in the game setting. So those are the things that I'll be looking for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be focused a lot on the safeties. The Titans need a safety, but I like looking at the safeties at the game, and because I kind of take mental notes, right? And you got Jonas Sanker, you have Max and Hook. You know, you had those two guys, and then there was the kid from Tulane, Caleb Bransall, that kind of caught my eye. Then you got Hunter Warler from Wisconsin. So guys popped, but now I want to see him carried over to the game. So I'm going to be really focused on the safeties because, again, Tennessee Titans need one. Unless they're going to bring back Quandre Diggs, and even then, Tennessee Titans probably still need a safety. So I think this is a good little glimpse into what they could be at the next level. And I'm really interested to see if Elijah Arroyo plays, and how do they ever target anybody else when he's on the field?
I mean, why would they? If they're trying to win the game,
Right.
and not
Maybe.
just,
I don't know. I
yeah.
mean, that may be the way to win the game.
Yeah, I think our buddy JT pointed this out. I don't know if he actually tweeted it or if it was just in the DMs, but like the energy of the national team practices in the morning was so much more intense than the American team that, like, if you could bet on the Senior Bowl, bet the mortgage on the national
I
team.
put that out on Twitter.
You did?
Mhm.
Okay.
I will also say I want to really focus in on the plays when Carson Vincent's in there, because I didn't really get a lot of Carson Vincent exposure personally. It's been mainly stuff I've heard from you, highlights I've heard from other people. So I really want to
Scrappy guy.
get some Carson Vincent exposure tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did he get any play at right tackle this week?
I
Could
do
they
not
switch
know.
him over? I don't remember that they did.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
time for the annual Tennessee Titans Senior Bowl draft.
Yes.
You explain to the people what it is.
Nice and simple. We get together and host a mock draft where we pick players for the Tennessee Titans that exclusively played this week at the Senior Bowl. Snake draft. There's usually more people involved, but shit happens. We couldn't get to it.
Yep.
I've been sick and in bed, so we couldn't really schedule a time to sit down and record it.
But they also don't ever stay for the game. Easton and JT.
Yeah, so we're going to go back and forth, snake style, where I pick a player from the Senior Bowl to fill a need for the Titans, and then you pick two, I pick two, so on and so forth. We're going to go 6 rounds this year, and you gave me the first pick since I've been sick. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to make it nice and easy. We are going to add some juice, some teeth to this pass rush. I'm taking Mike Green out of Marshall.
Now, for the record, this does not mean that we think that the Tennessee Titans are going to select these people in the first round, or these guys are even worth the first round pick. We're just building how, if we had only Senior Bowl people available to us in a draft, this is how we would pick for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely not taking any of these fucking quarterbacks, that's for sure.
No.
So, spoiler alert, no quarterbacks get drafted for Team Zach. All right. I'm going Josh Conerly Jr. because this team needs either another answer at tackle. Now, whether that means that Josh Conerly Jr. is your left tackle and you put Latham at right, or you keep Latham at left, and you put Conerly right, I don't care. You give me some Josh Conerly on that line, and you got Peter Skoronski, you have J.C. Latham, and you have Josh Conerly. And guess what? With my second pick, I'm going to double down on offensive linemen because, like, this is something Tennessee Titans should have done. I'm going Gray Zabel.
Best offensive lineman here this
week. Best offensive lineman here. So now think about this, people. You have J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Gray Zabel, and
Josh Conerly.
That
sounds pretty damn
for
good.
a minimum of 2 years together, all those guys together.
Yeah.
And possibly 3 years if you exercise the fifth-year option on Peter Skoronski.
Yeah.
That's building through the trenches. That's building through the foundation. I just don't talk about it. I be about it.
And the thing about the Gray Zabel pick is that if something happens with Cushenberry, you need to get out of that contract or something, or if the injuries render him ineffective moving forward, Gray Zabel can slot over and play some center too. So that's a really good pick there.
Then probably the quarterbacks. Ross just said national team is the underdog. No idea how they even price that. Probably the quarterbacks. We're probably underplaying the importance of quarterback at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, fair enough. With my second pick, I'm going to shore up the right tackle spot with Ariante Ursary. He moved over to right tackle some during practice this week, and the play didn't really slip a whole lot. He's a powerful guy, strong hands. The movement was fine. That was a question I had about him coming in, but he looks like a tackle to me, and I think he kind of fits the mold of the type of tackle that Bill Callahan wants for his run game. So I'm going to get him a new toy to play with, and we're going to lock down the bookends for the next 10 years for the Tennessee Titans. Damn, I held it in all episode. And then with my second pick, I'm going to address the wide receiver position with Jack Betch out of TCU. Besh. Not Betch, like Betch.
Bechamel.
All right, good to know. Jack Besh out of TCU. I think he's a really, really complete wide receiver. I think he's got the physicality, makes catches out of his frame, really good stutter step, really good start and go speed. I think he would make for a savvy addition to this receiving core and another weapon that whoever the quarterback is can throw to.
So I'm going for edge rusher at this point because I got Josh Connolly Jr., got Gray Zabel. I'm going Shamar Stewart, the
easy pick.
Maybe a top 3 edge rusher in this draft class.
Yeah.
I like Shamar Stewart. I think he did show enough. And, man, they need some juice. They need some electricity. They need guys that get after the pass rusher and not just wait and clean up a mess that someone else created an opportunity. They need someone that generates pass rush. And, yes, that is a shot at Harold Landry, who is maybe not even a B-plus player.
I wasn't going to say it out loud.
But then I'm going to follow it up with something different because I said, hey, you can't waste a premium pick on a defensive lineman. I don't really feel like I'm wasted. And this is not to, pander to University of Tennessee fans, but I'm taking Omar Norman Lott. I'm going into a strict 3-4, and I'm sending Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, and Omar Norman Lott every fucking play at the quarterback. Good luck, offensive lineman, because you know what was said this weekend? The Senior Bowl scuttlebutt around Omar Norman Lott was that Josh Heupel was essentially an idiot for not playing him more, for doing this silly rotation, and that he is a better pass rusher than James Pierce. He's got quick feet, good technique. He was probably the second best edge rusher out of his group. I mean, he's not really an edge rusher. He's been playing on the defensive line, but he's the quickest pass rusher outside of maybe Shamar Stewart on his current the American team. That includes Princely. That includes Jared Ivey. That includes Walter Nolan. Omar Norman Lott.
Well, when the man says he's going to build in the trenches, he means he's going to build in the trenches. I'm going to get to work on the trenches as well with my next 2 picks. I'm going to go with Miles Frazier. I think he comes in right away and starts at right guard. And now I've rebuilt the Titans' offensive line to look like J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Miles Frazier, and Ariante Ursary. With the second pick, I'm going to go with David Walker. Similar to what Zach said, I don't think this team needs 1 edge rusher. I think they need 2. I think he's got an interesting blend of power moves and speed moves. I think he can be a contributor for this team. Zach, you've got 2 more picks before we wrap this thing up.
All right, I'm going Tez Johnson. He's my baby. He's my precious baby boy.
At a playmaker.
Listen, if you want speed, this is speed. If you want technique, you got technique. I don't care if he only plays 9 games a season at this point. Those are going to be the best fucking 9 games you got out of any of the wide receivers. And he gives you dependability. He gives you some maybe punt return possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But he also gives you a deep threat, an intermediate threat, a short threat, a screen threat to take it to the house every time he touches the ball. Draft playmakers. And again, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm down on Cedric Gray. I'm down on James Williams. I'm down on Kenneth Murray. And from what I've heard, this was specifically talked about Jeff Simmons this week on the Senior Bowl scuttlebutt, is that they love Jeff Simmons because they could tell him one thing and he's got it.
He's got it. It's automatic.
And I think you need someone like that inside the middle of that defense, that you tell them one thing and they got it. And they got football instincts and they can direct and lead and be vocal and be dependable. And I'm going Jeffrey Bass, the linebacker out of Oregon. That's that. If out of all the things that will undo me in this draft voting, it will be taking a linebacker.
Taking a linebacker. I think it's a sneaky need, though. I think they need. They at least need to add some competition there because nobody really rose up from the pack at the end of the season to claim the spot.
I love James Williams.
I love James Williams too. Yeah.
But I mean, we got to be honest. When you're in the NFL, if you have an opportunity to upgrade a position that was down so bad last year, you got to take it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to wrap up by adding another playmaker. I'm going to go with Ty Felton just because you took Tez Johnson. I'm going to add some speed out of the slot, really quick, nimble footwork. This guy could be a big play waiting to happen. So I've added a couple of playmakers in Ty Felton and Jack Besh. I've rebuilt the offensive line with Ariante Ursary and Miles Frazier, and I added 2 edge rushers in Mike Green and David Walker. For Zach, he added offensive lineman Josh Connerly Jr., Gray Zabel, defensive edge rushers Shamar Stewart, Omar Norman Lott, playmaker, wide receiver Tez Johnson, and linebacker Jeffrey Bassa. I'm going to put the teams up on Twitter in a reply to this show and with a poll. You guys can vote on who put together the best Senior Bowl team for the Tennessee Titans.
That will do it for us. We'll be back tomorrow right after the Senior Bowl game, probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes after the game concludes. Once everybody clears out of the press box, we'll go live from there, give you guys our latest update with who we felt were the big winners and losers of the game, or the effed up of the game. Maybe there's some people that rebounded from their bad practice week. Maybe there's some people that didn't show up when the lights turned on. All that stuff kind of matters. So we'll give you all that kind of information as well. And then, of course, thanks to our sponsors, Lions Ford and Mark Spain Real Estate. We appreciate that. They've brought us down here. Couldn't have been down here without Lions Ford, specifically because we drove a Lions Ford car down here. So we, have to give them big props. Drive a little, save a lot in Lewisburg, Tennessee. I'll be back in the studio at 105 The Zone next week. And then, of course, we'll be back doing Football and Other F Words Thursdays at 6 p.m. starting next week as well. Other than that, this has been Football and Other F Words. We'll see you guys tomorrow after the game. And you have just been out.